How's it going, guys? So, for those of you who haven't heard, there has been talks of a possible unification this April between Vasyl Lomachenko and Jezreel Corrales. Now, I like this fight in the sense that it's a unification, and I always support unification fights because it brings us closer to having an established champion in a division when a guy has more than one of the belts. But in terms of the fight itself, I view the fight as a complete mismatch. I see nothing that Jezreel Corrales can bring to this fight to even trouble Lomachenko. I just think it's a complete mismatch. I think every single round will be under control by Lomachenko, and I see him winning the fight by stoppage. To be honest, now the way I see this fight, Vasyl Lomachenko in just his third professional fight took on Gary Russell, who was similar to Corrales in the sense that he's a slick southpaw and a good athlete. However, Gary Russell Jr. was unbeaten. Gary Russell Jr. was young. Gary Russell Jr. was one of the fastest boxers in the sport in terms of hand speed. Obviously, foot speed wasn't great, but his hand speed was phenomenal. And for Vasily Lomachenko to dissect that in his third professional fight and to outwit and outbox somebody with such a hand speed advantage, like I said, in just his third professional fight, it was astonishing. And he really took Gary Russell to school. I mean, watching that fight a second time was easier to see how one-sided it was as opposed to the first time. You really get the feeling, but that by about the third round, Lomachenko had completely taken control of the fight and he had cracked the code. Like he had a very fast, very quick opponent in front of him. But once he realized that he didn't have the foot speed to match the hand speed, and he kind of was fighting in the same pattern and throwing the same combinations, Lomachenko just adjusted to it and completely schooled the guy. I mean, it was a very one-sided fight, much more one-sided than the scoring suggested. So yeah, I see nothing that Jezreel Corrales can do to really trouble Lomachenko. I think this is going to be if this fight does take place, and it's looking likely. Obviously it's not confirmed yet, so I don't really want to predict anything. But from reports that I've read, that they're in talks for the fight in April. So I do hope it happens because, like I said, it's a unification, and I like unifications. But yeah, I see it being a similar situation to the Gary Russell fight. However, Lomachenko at this stage of his career is sitting down on his punches more because he's been a professional for longer now, and he's been in the ring and he's gotten a lot of experience. He knows now that he can carry his power into the later rounds. He hurt Salido in the 12th round, so I think Lomachenko is much more confident in his power now. Far more experience since then. Obviously, he's fought quite a few guys since then. He fought Nicholas Walters recently. He also fought Rocky Martinez. Those guys are on the same level as Corrales, in my opinion. Corrales is not a bad fighter. He did defeat Takashi Uchiyama. He's coming off back-to-back victories over Uchiyama. One of them by a late TKO, and the next one was it a late TKO? I can't remember the round. I've seen the fight on YouTube. I've completely forgotten what round it was though. And the next one, I haven't seen the rematch. It was a split decision victory, I believe. I'll need to check the rematch out. Both fights were in Japan. But yeah, from what I have seen of Corrales, I've watched quite a lot of his fights online. I'm somewhat impressed, but just compared to Lomachenko, I'm not impressed. Okay, I see Lomachenko taking this guy to school, and I see him taking him out late. In fact, I honestly, I don't know who I'd pick between Nicholas Walters and Corrales. To be honest, I would probably pick Nicholas Walters in that fight. I mean, let's not completely write Nicholas Walters off. I know it doesn't look good for him after he quit on his stool against Lomachenko, but to be honest, I don't think that Corrales is quite as prolific with his punches as Lomachenko. He certainly doesn't have the high punch output that Lomachenko does, or the work rate. So, if he were to fight Walters, I don't see Walters getting overwhelmed so quickly like he was against Lomachenko. Against Lomachenko never gave Walters room to breathe. I mean, every time Walters flinched or threw a feint or something, Lomachenko would counter. Lomachenko was coming in at angles and just completely busting him up. And yeah, he just couldn't attune to that, and he just overwhelmed Walters, and Walters just quit. Quit with quite a lot left in him because he just knew that he couldn't win the fight. So yeah, But I don't really see a fight against Corrales. If Walters were to fight him, I don't see it ending up in the same situation. So yeah, mismatch in my opinion. I think Lomachenko destroys this guy. Um, One other option that I've been hearing about, another fight people have been talking about, is the potential of a fight against Gamboa. Do you know, I've never really been that impressed by Gamboa. You know, Gamboa to me, he's a nice, fast, powerful, explosive puncher. You know, lingers around on the outside and jumps in sporadically with some very nice, very explosive attacks. But I don't think he's very good defensively. Doesn't have a great chin. Going into the later rounds, like we saw against Terence Crawford, I mean, Gamboa had a lot of success early on in that fight, but as soon as Crawford started to pick up the pace a bit, he just overwhelmed him and destroyed him. And I know that was against a bigger guy, so you have to take that into consideration. But still, I've never, even other fights I've seen, I've just never really been that impressed by Gamboa. So I just think that a fighter of Lomachenko's intellect and Lomachenko's IQ in the ring, as well as his athleticism, because Lomachenko is one of the best athletes in the sport. Great stamina, great balance, seems to be strong and powerful, seems to be hitting harder every fight, and great work rate and great rhythm in the ring. So I don't really see any of these guys. Honestly, at super featherweight, I don't see anybody. I don't see anybody coming close to defeating Lomachenko at this stage. Um, you have a new champ in the division now. Jose Pedraza was defeated by Mayweather's boy, Gervonta Davis. Haven't seen Gervonta Davis fight. Other than that fight, I watched the Corrales fight. The Pedraza fight live. The reason I never did a post-fight video was because I was too busy focusing on the James DeGale Badu Jack fight. But yeah, Mayweather's fighter, he looked okay. He did well considering he was going on against a world champion, and he had never even been in against anybody who was even a contender before. I mean, you look at his record; he just fought a bunch of journeymen, but he looked good. But to be honest, I think Pedraza was the weakest champion in that division. I really don't think that Pedraza was very good, and also the way that Pedraza fought, he didn't fight like a champion to me. He didn't fight like a guy that was that motivated to defend his title. He was coming forward and he was very sloppy, and he had no respect for Gervonta Davis and no respect for Gervonta Davis's power, and that cost him, and he ended up getting knocked out. So, yeah, good performance by Gervonta Davis, but could he really match Lomachenko? I mean, let's be real, Lomachenko kills that boy, man. Right now, I wouldn't even be. See if they were to fight next. I wouldn't even be surprised if Lomachenko did him over in 4 rounds. Honestly, I think 5 rounds tops. I think he'd smash him. I wouldn't mind seeing the fight because again, it's a unification, and even if Davis was to lose, he could still come back from it. It's not the end of the world. Okay, you can lose a fight and then you can come back and you can go back to the drawing board and rebuild. Too many of these fighters spend too much of their time trying to protect an unbeaten record. Why not just go for the gold? Why not just defend your title and try and unify the belts and whatnot and see how it goes? None of these young champions, or at least a lot of them, seem to have the ambition where they really believe in themselves. And I know Gervonta Davis is young, but that they've made it pretty clear that they're not interested in a unification at this stage, at least not with Lomachenko. Another potential opponent for Lomachenko is, of course, Jason Sosa, who I believe holds the regular WBA belt. It's a very good fight. I would like to see that fight. I think Jason Sosa, obviously, he wouldn't win. Lomachenko comfortably outboxes him, in my opinion. But Jason Sosa, I was quite impressed by his relentlessness in the Smith fight. He was very relentless, coming forward, very tough. A hard shell to crack, basically. A very durable and well conditioned guy who I think is going to be a very difficult test for anybody in that division. And of course, he had the draw against Nicholas Walters. He was able to drag Nicholas Walters into a very difficult fight. So I think that Jason Sosa is a very good fighter. He's improved a lot since the Walters fight also. So I wouldn't mind seeing a Lomachenko fight against Sosa. I think that's an interesting fight. I think it's a a good workout, if nothing else. I'm not sure if Lomachenko would get the stoppage in that fight, because from what I saw of Sosa, he's very durable and very tough. He's a workman-like fighter. He really works hard in the ring, and he's got a lot of stamina. So I think it would be an interesting fight. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. The fight that I would also like to see, and I spoke about this in a couple of videos about Lomachenko, the fight that I think is the most logical fight, because what a lot of people have been talking about is him building up towards a Pacquiao fight. But what I think is logical in that sense is for him to fight Terry Flanagan, move up to lightweight, and fight Terry Flanagan for his WBO title, because apparently, according to the WBO, with what they've been doing with Canelo, if you're a champion in a lower division, apparently you can become mandatory immediately for for a title in a higher division. I mean, if Canelo can do it, why not Lomachenko? So yeah, I'd like to see Lomachenko come over to the UK and fight Terry Flanagan. I mean, I would take Lomachenko in that fight. I think he would comfortably outbox Flanagan. And Flanagan's a southpaw too, and he's got the WBO title at 135. So that would bring him closer to a Manny Pacquiao fight. Perhaps Pacquiao would then be tempted to move down to 135, where he used to hold the title, and fight for that WBO belt there against Lomachenko. In kind of a passing of a torch fight for the top ranked stable. But anyway, let me know what you guys think, and thanks for watching.